Hello folks, Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero November 2021 kit. Again, our kit comes in these great 8x10 zippered pouches. Let's see what we've got this month. Looks like this is all about the dies this month. This is our stamp set. This is a 4x6-inch stamp set. This has got 2 pattern stamps on it, stripes and a polka dot, and then all sorts of little greetings, sentiments, partial greetings. We've got happy holidays, Merry Christmas, season's greetings, from Santa, warm wishes, enjoy, and open me with love for you too, from no peeking. Many sentiments on that. A smaller stamp set in favor of 13 coordinating fancy dies. Looks like, okay, so we've got a head or a face here. We've got a snowman hat, a scarf, 2 scarves, Santa beard, Santa mustache, Santa hat, elf hair, elf collar, elf hat. This looks like a reindeer ears. This must be a reindeer snout. We've got a little piece of holly here. Let's see what else is in our kit. A ½ ounce of white puff embossing powder, another lacquer pen. This is the Sparkle Clear lacquer pen. Lots and lots of glitter in that clear lacquer powder. We also get some papers this month. We've got 1 sheet of white glitter paper. That's a nice, pretty kind of a multicolored glitter, white glitter paper. This is cardstock. These are all 8.5 by 5.5. And then we have 10 sheets of snow cardstock. That just might have to be my 10 card bases right there. Let's die cut these babies and see what these are all about. Okay, here we go. Here's our head and all our assorted pieces. So let's go for the obvious first. Here we've got the elf hair and an elf hat and an elf collar. So we've got a cute little elf there. We've got, this is the Santa hat. So we've got a Santa hat, a Santa beard, cover his mouth, and then a Santa mustache and nose right here. So there's our Santa. Of course, our holly can go just about anywhere. There's Santa. These are cute. And it looks like these all have little holes at the top too, so they could be tags or gift tags. This is definitely a snowman hat, and we've got a couple of scarves here. It's a snowman scarf. This is a bigger scarf. Looks like one's a little bit smaller, the other one's a little bit bigger. Snowman. What? No carrot? Then there's also, this one's cute, a reindeer snout, ears and antlers. That's adorable. And of course, that little whiter scarf fits him just perfectly. So it looks like we've got a Santa, an elf, a reindeer, a snowman. Endless possibilities as far as what you die cut these out of. So that's everything in our fun little Christmas paper piecing, character creating kit for November of 2021. These just may turn into our annual Christmas ornaments for the family. I'll be experimenting with all sorts of ways to use this die set and this stamp set with my 10 cards. And remember, no peeking. And here we have my 10 cards. I did use the snow cardstock included in the kit for all of my card bases. I figured the best way to get into this kit was just to go ahead, die cut everything with cardstock and create our characters to take a look at what they look like. Now, all of the dies this month have these little hanger hooks on them to turn these into tags or into ornaments. My goal was to make 10 cards out of this, so we'll let everybody else make tags and cards this month. I'm making cards. Our first one here on the snow card base is a Happy Holidays Snowman. Is this guy adorable or what? I do enjoy paper piecing, and these dice are perfect for that. Now, this head is cut out of white cardstock. and I cut a smaller oval of black to glue behind that for the eyes. I die cut the hat from some pitch black cardstock, the hat band from some red cardstock, and just hand cut a couple of these thin white strips to use for highlights on his hat. I glued everything to the hat and glued the hat to the top of his head, and I added the holly decoration cut from some blue-green cardstock and some red cardstock. Just paper piece those together. I die cut the scarf from some pattern paper, and I cut a second one in a different orientation to give the top wrap of the scarf some distinct definition from the bottom wrap. So bottom part of the scarf, then I cut the scarf again at a different angle and just trimmed that top part off to give a little definition between the top wrap and the bottom wrap. I did color the edges of that scarf with a Memento black marker. Just coloring the edges gave that even a little bit more definition, really makes that scarf stand out nicely. I freehand cut this little carrot from some orange cardstock. I glued that in place. I added 2 pink eyes that were cut from a piece of cardstock. The pink eyes worked perfectly for little blush spots on his cheeks, and I used the white gel pen to add highlights in his eyes. We have a dapper snowman with a coy little smile there. I die cut a piece of Hero Hues Arctic cardstock with a lawn font stitched rectangle die. I stamped the sentiment using blue Hawaii reactive ink, and I did emboss that with a little bit of clear embossing powder. I think you can see that shine there. I glue that to my snow card base, added my snowman with a little foam tape, and I embellished the card with some Hero Arts mini clay snowflakes. Perfect. Nothing particularly fancy or labor intensive about this, but he is so cute. Okay, Santa's got to be next. From Santa with Love. Oh, he is just as cute as that snowman. Here's the pink head, red hat and nose, the tag loop I trimmed away, the white trim and beard, and another smaller black oval glued behind the head for the eyes. I took a Versa marker pen and I used the fine tip on this to draw some swirls and lines in his beard and on the trim on his hat, and then I used that white puff embossing powder on that. I find that white puff embossing powder works better when it's used sparingly. I really like that. I think the swirls on his little trim on his hat came out especially nicely. A nice little touch of texture, and it's something that you can actually see too. I like that white puff embossing powder for just some little highlights here and there. I die cut the background from some black tie glitter paper. This is an old LDRS fancy rectangles and layers die. I die cut the black tie glitter cardstock and then cut a frame from the white glitter cardstock in our kit. I glued those together. I stamped the sentiments on a snow card base using intense black ink and embossed them with a little embossing powder as well, so they get a little bit of shine on them too. I glued the frame in place and then added Santa with some foam tape, added a little white highlights in his eyes with my white gel pen. A really cute Santa. I finally did go in there and I added some glitter to his hat with a Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. I think you can see that sparkle right there. It brings him more into the realm of his background with a little sparkly hat there. From Santa with Love. Plain, straightforward. There's your die-cut Santa. Now, the elf actually has hair and ears and a collar and a hat. So let's tackle the elf. This is my first little elf card. It says Season's Greetings with our fun little elf, all done up in green. I cut his head and the hair and ears both from a piece of beige textured cardstock. And then I added some blush to his cheeks using my Pebbles chalk palette. Again, I trimmed the loop away from the top of his hat. I die cut the hair and ears again from some brown textured cardstock, trimmed the ears off, and then glued the hair on the top of the head with the flesh colored ears. The hat and the collar cut from light green and dark green cardstock. And I actually cut the little bell on the end of his hat with a piece of, just a little piece of mylar I had sitting on my desk. Perfect little silver bell on the end of his hat. I glued him all together. Of course, I added a black oval behind him for his eyes, added some white highlights with my white gel pen. I gave him a little pink nose as well. I think that's the same pink from Santa here. I stamped the polka dot pattern stamp on opposite corners of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel of white cardstock. And then I die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, added a thin red mat behind that, and glued that down to our snow card base. I stamped this sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock using Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink, and then I embossed that with a little clear embossing powder as well. And I added our elf and our sentiment with some foam tape. The little points on his collar and hat were just begging to be made special, so I added little clear crystals to his hat and his collar, and then finished out the card with some red crystals in the white areas. Season's greetings, a cute, fun little pointy-eared elf. That's our third character in our die cuts. And last but not least, we of course have the reindeer. Warm wishes. So the ears and antler are one die. I cut that from brown. I cut his head from brown. I cut a piece of black to go behind that. I then cut his muzzle out of that same beige textured cardstock that I used on the elf. Cut his nose from some red, the scarf from some blue-green, the holly again from plain green and red, and then paper piece those all together. I did die cut the antler and ears out of pink, and then fussy cut the pink away and glued that on top of this die cut. A little paper piecing there. I did add some of the sparkle clear lacquer pen on his nose that I glued in the middle of his muzzle there. Again, I added some blush there with that pink pebbles chalk, glued everything together, stamped this sentiment using walnut stain Distress Oxide ink. I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder. I die cut this frame from some dark brown cardstock using an oval wood grain frame infinity die from Hero Arts, and that's another piece of Arctic cardstock in the back. I glued that frame down to my snow card base and added our reindeer on top of that with some foam tape. Now, honestly, I was really thinking of this as a little portrait of a beloved reindeer, but once I put it all together, I realized that this might be mistaken as a mounted head of a reindeer and someone been hunting for Rudolph and it's hanging in their trophy room right now. I didn't think of that until this was all put together. That makes me giggle. Maybe you can give this card to your favorite big game hunter. Sorry, Rudolph, I don't mean anything by that. Okay, so that covers our 4 characters. That's pretty straightforward, rather basic die cut paper piecing approach to this kit right there. Now, a lot of people I saw online were making felt ornaments or felt pieces and doing all these felt tags and all of these assorted things, but I don't have any felt. I don't have any felt anywhere in my house, but I did remember that I actually had some flocking powder. Does anybody have this in their stash? This is an Inkadinkadoo flocking powder. I bought this kit a number of years ago. I know it's just been sitting in my stash, not being used. I tried it once or twice and couldn't figure out how to make it work well. So I thought it was a good idea to try and see if I could get this flocking powder to work instead of felt. So that brings us to our next card, and we have a Merry Christmas card with Santa with a perfectly flocked hat. Oh, I love that. I don't know if that reads. I think the white part certainly reads on camera, but his hat and the trim are all flocked, all nice and soft, and actually kind of fuzzy. It kind of feels like velvet where the nap moves back and forth. So pleased with that. It took me a while to figure out how. We'll get into that in a little bit. I did discover that you do need to do the flocking on the same colored cardstock. I tried this originally on some white, the red on the white with liquid glue, and it just doesn't, there's just too much see-through there. So I did discover that you need to be on the same color cardstock. So this is flocked on white, this is flocked on red, glued together. Another pink head for Santa. I gave him a little blush on his nose and on his cheeks with that same powder. Another black oval glued behind him. I did the beard and mustache with just white cardstock. I didn't want to lose all of the little details in his hair here by flocking it, so I didn't flock his beard. I did leave the ring on the top of this and tied some of our baker's twine in that. This is one of my favorite ways to give an ornament to somebody at the holidays. I love to attach it to a card. This is just attached with some goobers, some Zotz goobers, and here's our lovely little Christmas ornament. I actually stamped the Merry Christmas stamp on the back, jotted down 2021. Now I cut this back piece with a scrap of white cardstock, and I partially die cut the hat in that white cardstock, and then lined that up with my built Santa, and then traced around the rest of the Santa and just fussy cut the rest of that out. So it was really pretty easy to create a solid back on this little Santa ornament. Really cute ornament. Santa, Merry Christmas 2021. I did stamp the stripe stamp on this snow card base using, again, the Candied Apple Distress Oxide ink. You can see where they overlap right there in the center, but that's the perfect place to put our Santa. The wide part of his beard goes right in the center there, sticks there with the goobers. These are Zotz removable clear adhesive dots. Those work really well to attach something to a card front. It'll keep it on there forever until the person takes it off and removes the dots. I stamped the Merry Christmas again with intense black ink. I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder, added some big white sequin snowflakes around the edges on that, attached my Santa, of course, with those Zotz glue dots. Here's a great Christmas card and an ornament all in one with some terrific flocking. Now, if anything deserved flocking in this kit, of course, it's that reindeer. I think you can actually see the flocking even better here. You slay me. The dark brown is all flocked. His ears are flocked, and the center of his ears are flocked too. Then his nose is flocked as well. That feels so nice. So I die cut his ears and antlers from dark brown, die cut his head from some dark brown. I'm actually using score tape, double-sided adhesive, to attach my flocking powder to my cardstock. So I'll stick this down. We'll get into that more. I'll show you more detail in a minute. His head is flocked in dark brown, but I didn't flock the bottom part of this so I could glue his muzzle on there. I did fussy cut the liner paper around the ears so I could flock the dark brown part and then take the liner paper off the ears and flock the inside of the ears as well. I then die cut another set of antlers from the brown cardstock and glued those over the antlers that had the double-sided adhesive on them. Now, if you look closely at this guy, he's got some fun eyes in there. They're not just big black eyes. He's got some whites and some pupils and some eyes and some highlights. I really love that. It's really easy. Once I figured this out, I started doing it on almost all my cards. Here's how I'm doing these little eyes. So I just die cut some extra eyes from some white cardstock and are coloring those with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. You can cut these from colored cardstock. On the reindeer, his eyes are just the brown, the same brown from his head. And here I'm taking a Pigma micron pen and just drawing little pupils on our eyeballs. It helps if you know which direction you want the eyes to look as far as where you draw the pupils. This is just a piece of scrap white cardstock, laying it down, placing our head with the empty eyes on top of that white cardstock, and then we'll add a little glue in those eye holes, and we're going to glue our colored eyes onto the white cardstock right through those eye holes. So the eye holes on the head are going to keep our eyes perfectly spaced as we move through this fancy eye bit. There you go. The eyes are on that scrap of white cardstock that's going to get glued to the back of the head. And now we can just put our head on top of the eyes, decide where we want those eyes looking, and there we've got whites behind the eyes. You can mark the sides of your white cardstock to show you where to trim that out. That's going to glue on right to the back of the head, hopefully with the eyes in the exact perfect position. We'll add some glue to that white cardstock. I went ahead and added it on the top and both of the sides, across the bottom, and of course a little across the center. I'll put that down on my desk and then lay my head on top of that, right where you want the eyes to be. It's really easy, and I think there's big bang for the buck here. That's my fancy eyes. So again, I die cut his scarf again from a piece of pattern paper in 2 different orientations, cut off the top part and glued that on the bottom part. I love that his scarf has Santa on it. You Slay Me, I printed that on some scrap white cardstock using my Silhouette software, and this is the Lucida Bright font. Our background here is actually some wood frames, infinity dies that I taped all together and die cut from a piece of auburn pearl cardstock. So it has a nice little bit of shine to that. Glued those down to a dark green mat and then glued that down to our snow card base. Had a little bit of a cattywampus angle there. I die cut our sentiment with a nesting oval die and added that and our reindeer to the front of this card with some foam tape. A couple of little bronze gems around the sentiment highlights that nicely. You Slay Me, more flocking. I'll show you what feels like to me a pretty foolproof way to flock. So the hat's black, and I do have some black flocking powder, so that's what we're going to use for this. Sukwang double-sided tape. I've got this in 6x6 sheets. I'm just going to add that to my black cardstock, and then we're going to die cut the hat from that. And there that pops right out. We'll go ahead and pop this out of the die, leaving, of course, the liner paper on. Trying to leave the liner paper on. There we go. I know I want this red, and I know I'd like a couple of white stripes on that hat. Let's see if that's possible. Now here I have this old hat that I was experimenting with the flocking. This one I colored red with alcohol marker and then added more on top of that. Not quite the same. This is still using liquid glue. This is before I jumped into the Sukwang, which seems to work the best. So I think I'm just going to cut the hat band out of this pre-flocked piece. And here it is die cut. You go, and I can cut that. This piece has already been flocked. I'm going to do those same cuts on my black one here, but only going through the liner paper. So I'm going to pull that liner paper off, and we're just going to attach our pre-flocked piece to the double-sided tape that's already there. Now I have some felt that's already on cardstock, so I think I'm going to just cut some straight lines from this. Now I think what really makes highlights on top hat work really well are if they're narrower at one end and thicker at the other, even just a little bit. And of course it helps if they're cut straight. Oh, see, that's just extra felt. That's pretty good. Okay, there's our 2 stripes. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. Now we're going to flock this piece with our black flocking powder. But let's put our little highlights in first. Now, I ultimately found that I got the best results by just dumping my powder out on a piece of wax paper. You could probably use a silicone mat as well. And then we're going to press the adhesive. Don't talk into it. This is powder. If you think glitter is bad, this stuff is crazy. Okay, that's probably enough. There we go, removing the last little bits of our liner paper. And now we're going to press this baby within an inch of its life into this flocking powder. Press it really hard. It's going to get on our other flocking, but hopefully it won't stick too badly to that, and we should be able to brush it off. Everything gets pressed in. Make sure you press your edges into that flocking powder. This stuff is kind of cool. If you see any spots that seem threadbare, you can go back down, press some more, give it another look right there in the center. Just pack that powder on until you can't really see any of the shiny adhesive underneath it. I make sure I got between, looks like I got between those two white stripes pretty well. That looks pretty good. I'm going to take a semi-stiff paintbrush and brush. What I'm looking for is a good flocking on the black powder, and I should be able to wipe most of the powder away from the other flocking. If the brush doesn't get it all, then a microfiber cloth helps a lot. But look at that. It's flocked. It's black flocked. I swear that feels even better than the felt. It definitely feels like flocking and not felt. Let me take a little microfiber cloth to this, see if that'll help pull a little of the black off of the red and white. It certainly does. And a perfectly flocked snowman hat. There we go. I might shave those white ones down a little bit. We'll see. That's flocking. If you've got any flocking powder in your stash, I hope that tip helps a little bit. Otherwise, this was a great fun little technique for me to experiment with and play with, and it works really, really well on these little character die cuts. I don't know if anybody has these flocking powders anymore. I gave them a look-see on the web, and it doesn't appear that these are available anymore. I have a lot more colors than these, and I tell you, I will use these a lot more now that I figured out how to make it work. And of course, wouldn't you know it, but I found some white felt in my stash. White, I don't have any colors. I only have white. I believe it's cheap acrylic felt, not the best kind of felt that you can possibly use, but I thought I would give it a try. Because it was cheap felt, I actually covered one side of that with the score tape sheets and attached a piece of white cardstock to the back of that to give it a little more stability, to keep it from stretching out of shape. That's what I did. This is what we've got for our next card. A great "There's no business like snow business. There's no business I know." There we go. A Broadway snowman, just for everybody. I couldn't resist doing this. Now, his head here is actually die cut from some white felt that, of course, I had mounted on some cardstock. Die cut that. His eyes, I actually embossed some clear embossing powder on some pitch black cardstock and then die cut his eyes out of that. So his little coal eyes have got some nice shine to them, regardless of the white highlights that I added with the white gel pen. This is the hat that I just flocked for you. I actually flocked a little carrot nose for him from some orange cardstock. And yes, of course, I have some orange flocking powder. So his nose is flocked. I added a little bit of that pink chalk. I freehand cut a little collar, tied a bow tie from some 1/4-inch ribbon, and I just hand cut his cane here. This is again that black tie glitter paper. The tips of this are that white glitter paper from our kit. For the background, I took a piece of Hero Hues nautical cardstock and some snow stencil that I had. I used my Deco Foil transfer gel and the Deco Foil silver shattered glass. Ran that through my laminator to make our nice sparkly snow in the background. I cut that down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, added a frame of nice brushed silver to that, glued those down to my snow card base, added my cane and my snowman with some foam tape. There's no business like snow business. Again, I printed that on a scrap of white cardstock. Again, using the Lucida Bright font. I die cut that with a nesting circle die, added that to the front with some foam tape There's no business like snow business. Just for you guys, all the way from New York City. I did have an interesting idea about Santa's beard, and I had a pretty good sized piece of that white felt with cardstock attached to the back of that left. So that's the idea that led to this card, and we've got Santa and Mrs. Claus. You make me merry. Aren't these guys cute? Now there's those eyes. Again, those fancy eyes in Santa and Mrs. Claus. Now all the white pieces on this are die cut from felt on cardstock. And I had to push that through my die cutting machine many times, so it actually embossed the details in that really very nicely. I'm just thrilled how nicely the details pressed into that cheap felt. I actually turned the beard upside down to make the hair on Mrs. Claus's head. I simply trimmed from his mouth to the edges to make her hairline there, and then I trimmed away all of the harsh points on the edges to make them a little softer curls for Mrs. Claus. She's got lovely green eyes, he's got lovely blue eyes. Her collar is just the top part of one of the scarf dies. His hat, those are both die cut from some red glitter cardstock. I've got the blue green and the regular green holly decorating their headpieces with some red gems for the berries. He's got a pink nose here. I printed this sentiment on another piece of Arctic cardstock, die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, added that to another piece of that red glitter cardstock to pull it all together, glued Santa and Mrs. Santa down with some foam tape. I love that she's wearing his beard for her hair, and you almost can't even tell that it's his beard without the mustache and without the little points on it. It just looks like Mrs. Claus's hair. Really, really cute. You make me merry. So here we got two characters on one card. Could I do that again? And might we try getting a little bit more ethnicity in our cards? This is my card number 9, again on a snow card base. And we have a Merry Christmas, no peeking, with two little kids looking at brightly wrapped presents right in front of them. I adore this. My big fun part on this one was partially die cutting the hair on this young man and then finishing the top cut of that with the bottom of the Santa's beard. So he's actually got a completely different hairdo than our young man on the right here. Dark brown for him, that again, same beige cardstock for this guy. These both have those fun little fancy eyes again, blue and brown. Nothing special for their noses here, but I did put a little blush on both of their cheeks, glued them all together. These, of course, are the stamps from our stamp set. I die cut our little squares with some square nesting dies. I die cut an extra one to go behind that, so these are a little bit thicker, so I could actually tie the ribbon around it. This is a piece of a snow pattern paper, die cut with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I stamped the Merry Christmas and the No Peeking stamps from our set with intense black ink, and I did emboss those with some clear embossing powder for a little more shine. No peeking. Of course, the big secret here is rounding the corners of their ears to take them out of the elf realm. I think they look like kids. It's kind of funny. It kind of look like they're eyeing each other's presents here. Merry Christmas. No peeking at yours or anybody else's. I'm totally into those eyes as well. So heaven knows my family is not above donning a pair of reindeer antler over the Christmas holidays and parading around in public. So that's what inspired this last card from me. I created this little character, and then he sat around on my desk for a couple days while I figured out what exactly to do with him. So for our card number 10 this month, we've got Dasher, Dancer, Prancer. I think I'm more of a vixen Merry Christmas. I think a complete dad card. Isn't it always dad who dons the antlers and ears? This was so much fun. Now, this was all die cut from some Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock and colored with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. I partially die cut the ears and antlers, so I didn't cut the ends of them, and then just continued those down to make our little head wrap, glued some twine to the bottom of that, and tied a little bow underneath his chin. I, of course, had to give him the reindeer snout. I gave him some fancy eyes. I actually drew some eyebrows in on this guy, colored his scarf exactly the same with alcohol markers. This guy makes me giggle. My big difference on his eyes here is I actually used tiny black gems for the pupils in his eyes, so he has some really nice sparkle there, but there is still another little tiny white dot in there, giving him some highlights, little highlight on his nose. This one makes me laugh a lot. I printed this, of course, on a panel of white cardstock, trimmed that down, and added a dark brown mat behind that, and then glued that down to our snow card base. Dasher, Dancer, Prancer. I think I'm more of a vixen. Merry Christmas! So there we go. That's my 10 cards using the My Monthly Hero November 2021 kit. Boy, that was really fast. I think I can keep playing with these character dies all season. It seems like the possibilities are truly endless. I didn't even get into much ornaments or tag making either. I did manage to use every die in this kit, but I didn't use every single sentiment stamp since I wasn't using the tags. The to and from wasn't there, the open me for you. I wasn't doing tags, so I didn't really use those, but I did use both of the patterns and all of the more complete sentiments. I used all of the snow cardstock, a little bit of the lacquer pen, some of the white glitter cardstock, a little bit of the white puff embossing powder, even a little of the red and white baker's twine. I think I gave this kit a pretty good workout this month. Everything is very Christmassy, but you know, I think that's the point. Yet again, we have a My Monthly Hero kit that sells out almost instantly. Now, Hero Arts releases the My Monthly Hero kits on the first Monday of each month. So if you're hesitant to become a subscriber, at least subscribe to the Hero Arts blog for sneak peeks and that all-important kit reveal. I'll include a link to the blog in my description down below. Go join that. It's a fun blog, posting almost every day. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here today. You inspire me. I hope I continue to inspire you. I hope I gave you a couple of interesting ideas on how you can use your November My Monthly Hero kit this year. I had such a great time playing with these. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. I send you best wishes for a happy, healthy, and a hilarious holiday with your family and friends. And as always, I wish you happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.